First, we have Mr. Rob Hamill of the Mass on Mr. Ballard's accusations of censure.
Thank you, Mr. Earnshaw. As a lifelong financial advisor, past VP of this board and financial committee chair, I'm very concerned with the agenda item censoring Lynn for doing her job financially overseeing the budget. I'd like to thank Lynn Dodges for her tireless efforts to understand a budget of $141 million. She has pointed out the information on the budget is no less than what our superintendent provided at his last district. The idea that she should be censored for doing her job is beyond pale. The steadfast refusal of the majority of this board to ask our administrators for appropriate accounting is shameful. It should also be noted that Lynn has every right to ask and direct our administrators and our superintendent for detailed financial information. The latest flap over 5 hours of salaried employee time on our $141 million budget is obscene. There's a hidden agenda here and something is very fishy. As far as Mr. Ballard making unsubstantiated accusations of Ms. Dodges lying, the question is whether Mr. Ballard is even mentally fit to be on this board. Mr. Ballard has demonstrated sexist, bullying, and psychotic behavior towards Ms. Dodges, documented over 7 years. He has unsubstantially called her a snake in the grass, a communist, a Nazi. Mr. Ballard has nothing to stand on as far as lying accusations against Ms. Dodges, and looking at it objectively, the only documented and admitted serial liar is Mr. Ballard himself, when he admitted to lying about not receiving money from the teachers union at the last SEPTA debate that he participated in 4 years ago. I call on Mr. Ballard to step down now from his board position due to an unfit mental capacity and documented lying. As far as the other board members voting for a censure, it would not surprise me to see the 8 teacher union supported directors voting for this as an orchestrated union political play. You are the board that voted on an early bird contract that is going to cost over $2.5 million per year for the next year without it even being on the agenda. Unbelievable. This is the first time I've been able to comment on this. Only Ms. Dodges voted against it. Thank you again, Ms. Dodges. Now we have all the principals cutting 10% of their budgets this year to keep the tax increases at 3.7%. Next year, with no election, you'll probably raise taxes much higher. You as a board are unfit to govern, and to add to our unionized teachers $2.5 million pensions over their lifetimes, while hurting our families through higher taxes and children through 10% principals cut. Meanwhile, Mr. Munson has no problem with the lie of omission when he didn't disclose anywhere in public that his wife is an indirect beneficiary of the contract vote due to the collective bargaining tactics of our neighboring school districts. He nevertheless voted for it, even with the appearance of a conflict of interest. Also, Mr. Bacher has no problem in promising 4 years ago that he would take into consideration the excess pensions and salary negotiations and completely ignoring that promise with the contract they voted on, with Lynn the only person voting against it. Now Mr. Earnshaw has a problem in the asbestos material fill at West Coastville that he appears to be covering up. Once again, Lynn was shut down in her investigation of this by him.
Thank you, Mr. Hamilton.
Let me remind him, I don't think it's 3.5 minutes.
Ms. Lynn Faust.
Let me remind him that he will be stripped of his immunity from prosecution for the cover-up if the EPA investigation leads to prosecution.
Please be seated.
Is that 3.5 minutes?
It's been 4 minutes now.
Thank you. Okay.
Ms. Lynn Dodges.
Thank you. Lynn Faust, EMAS. I personally want to thank Lynn Dodges for a job well done as school board director. She has been a champion for the East End taxpayer. It doesn't make sense to me at all that this board wants to censure someone for doing the job that she was elected to do. Also, I don't know if you were listening to the words of that first song that was sung tonight. What they said was, no place for hatred, no place for bullying. Thank you.
Yeah. have Ms. Jane Bachman of Kentucky to support Lynn Donches.
Go get him.
No, I'm going to save that.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the name. The name, Ms. Jane Bachman.
Jane Bachman, CPA. I apologize, I didn't have anything planned. I just wanted to come and show my support for Lynn Donches, who I voted for. And, I mean, I voted for most people here, and, I mean, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Except one more thing.
I know somehow when I do audits, I do always look at the participation of the board, the questions they ask, are they getting the budget, are they looking at it? I think it's an important part of any organization and any organization's internal control. I'll add that. Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Joan Slozer of Emmaus on Lynn Donches' censure.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank School Board Director Lynn Donches for her hard work and her perseverance in seeking the information she deems necessary to fulfill her duties as an elected official. Lynn has followed her convictions and beliefs in her quest to become fully informed on matters that come before the board that require her vote. She is conscientious and responsible, and she takes her position very seriously. Lynn is doing her job the way she knows, with thoroughness and attention to detail. Again, thank you, Lynn, for all you do. Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Chris Donatelli of Macungie on item number 11, the request to censure Ms. Donches.
Good evening, everybody. Censure, the expression of formal disapproval. When censured, the member must give up any committee chairs they hold, but he or she does not lose his or her elected position. School Board Director Ballard's proposal to tonight's agenda to censure Ms. Lynn Donches may have a chilling effect on anyone considering running for the school board director. It could prevent good people who have our children's best interest at heart from running for school board director for fear of retribution from other school board members in the future. Charles Ballard is accusing Ms. Donches of wasting school resources for doing what she was elected to do by her peers. Mr. Ballard has been on the East Penn School Board for 20 years and knows the superintendent reports to the school board, not the other way around. Other school board directors have posed questions that required school resources to obtain an answer, yet they are not similarly accused. I question the integrity of Mr. Ballard's request. Thank you.
Next, we have Ms. Arlene Dabrow of Lower Macungie. The topic is $9 million.
This is Arlene Dabrow, the Lower Country Township, and I'm here in support of Mrs. Donches also. I met Mrs. Donches when she came knocking on my door with a portfolio full of data for an unpaid position on this board. And my understanding, first of all, I believe that she continues to do a good job. My understanding is that this is over $9 million of expenses that are unaccounted for. That's my understanding of this. But when I got here this evening and saw this number 11 other items, I'm in shock that this is published here. Publicly censure Ms. Lynn Donches for waste of district resources and material misstatements. The material that I received from her when I checked it out was factual, and this appears to me to be, I hate to use the word, but I'm going to use it anyway, Joe Stalin type tactics. I call this fascism. Thank you for your attention, board members. Mr. Ballard, one more thing. Like Jane, I have, in addition to that, I got a lecture from you at the last board meeting that I attended on fiduciary responsibility when you passed the TIF here. Fiduciary responsibility, in my days, olden days in accounting, required both sides of the profit and loss statement, income, which Mr. Ballard lectured me on correctly, and expenses, which Ms. Donches is looking out for. So, and as a 50-year liberal, I got a notice from a conservative person this morning. This is not about liberal or conservative or Democrat or Republican. This is about our government failing us. So I hope you will take heed. I hope you will not pass this motion. I hope it will be rejected. And in good conscience, I hope you will do the right thing. Thank you.
Mr. Giovanni Landi of Emmaus, also on Ms. Lynn Donche's censure.
Good evening. I just came this evening. I wanted to show my support for Ms. Donchez. I want to say thank you for all the hard work that you do, not just for the taxpayers of this district, but also for the parents, the children, and everyone who comes to this district seeking a good education. I think it's a sad day in America when a censure motion would be put forth on a school board director for doing nothing more than her job. And I look to the rest of the board to rein in the loose cannons you have that run around bullying other board members. Thank you.
Next, I have Mr. Charles Rhodes of Allentown on the censure motion.
Charles Rhodes, Allentown, in regards to Mr. Ballard's motion. A motion for censure is like asking question. A motion for censure for asking questions is like a dictator who doesn't like opposition. They send the opposition to Siberia, like Nikita Khrushchev. Complaining that the administration has to work too hard and waste too many hours is a bogus complaint. Are we wasting resources? Failure to answer the board's questions may show incompetence of the administration. Asking the administration to do their job right the first time should be a standard we keep. If the board doesn't ask questions, are they managing like an ostrich with its head in the sand? You are responsible for the taxpayers' money and the $140 billion budget. If you have no questions, if you ask no questions, you will get no answers. Perhaps you will know ignorance is bliss until Marge and Sobolski bites your ostrich. And thank you very much for having the elevator in good order.
All right.
Next, I have Ms. Janice Bowman of Bath, Pennsylvania. On issue number 11, censorship, Ms. Lynn Donchez per Mr. Charles Ballard. And request, my letter goes on June 8, 2015, PSC record.
Thank you. My name is Janice Bowman from Bath, Pennsylvania. I want to thank Lynn for what she has done on the board and anybody else that stands up for taxpayers when we want to know questions where money's coming from, how it's spent. I thought since Mr. Ballard decided to write a resolution, I should write him a resolution, which I'd like to present to you, and put it in your minutes, please. I'll give you a copy after I'm done. I resolve that Mr. Charles Ballard, a member of the East Penn School Board, is hereby formally and publicly censured for using Saul-Alinsky Rule Number 5. Ridicule is man's most potent weapon. Rule number 9, a threat is usually more terrifying than the thing itself. And rule number 12, pick the target, freeze it, and polarize it. These rules were used unethically in connection with Ms. Lynn Dunches, who is presently an EPSD board member. Mr. Ballard called Mrs. Dunches a Nazi during the public school board meeting I attended. Monday, June 8th, today, Mr. Charles Ballard is bringing a motion of censure for Mrs. Dunches, doing her due diligence and requesting information before making any final decision on issues brought before the board. She is being falsely accused of misusing funds and spreading untruths publicly and to the board. While at the same time this is done in secret behind closed doors without any notification to the said person with the information on what she is being accused of, making this an unfair and unethical practice. This behavior can only be called bullying to get whatever the majority rule wants. This also is being used to threaten any new elected board members to toe the lines or receive the censure. Transparency and accountability are frowned upon, and ridicule of any kind should not be allowed on the East Penn School Board per the censure of Mr. Charles Ballard. Be it farther resolved that Mrs. Lynn Dunches and other school board members requesting further individual data be considered and acted upon to represent the taxpayers who voted and elected such members. If staff is unable to complete the request due to the lack of skills, lack of time, or outdated computers, it is up to the superintendent to fix the problem and notify the board upon completion. Please put this in the June 8th minutes. I just want to end by thanking Lynn again for standing up, because the way she's treated on this board, I don't know anybody that ever want to run for this that really is scared to death of what you're going to try to do. But I have to tell you, truth has no agenda, and we are on to what's going on and will not step down. Thank you.
Second.
Last request to address the board I have is Mr. Otto Slozer of Emmaus, also on the censure/agenda.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I've been attending East Penn School Board meetings now for about 8 years. I've missed very few. Mrs. Dunches, I want to thank you on behalf of the taxpayers, this taxpayer, the students, and the citizens of the community for the hard work and diligence that you do for both the taxpayers and the students. I find it appalling over the last 3.5 years to see the roadblocks that have been put in her path by the board and the administration to prevent her from getting information that she needs to do her duty financially for the taxpayers of this community. Now we come to tonight, a censure, which is deja vu. Back in the mid-90s, the Emmaus Borough Council was considering a censure against Mayor Barry Bartow for alleged leaking confidential information to the press and the public. Our solicitor, Jeff Marchis, prepared a report, and he said, you may be justified in your censure, but beware, because usually it will end up in a lawsuit, because censure invariably damages the reputation of the individual. Furthermore, he said, be careful, because if you damage their rights, your insurance carrier, your errors and omissions, may decline to cover you. The taxpayers are not responsible, so guess what? Ask your solicitor what the result would be if that's the case. Ladies and gentlemen, it is appalling to have a censure on the board agenda tonight for a board member who was elected by the people to do a job, and that's all she has done, a good job, and thank you very much for doing that.